This is the Recorded Conversations podcast, the podcast dedicated to compassionately considering all perspectives while engaging in an authentic, connected dialogue. I'm Danielle Kingstrom. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is really special. Okay, I discovered my next guest through the TikTok, but I was really drawn to him. He just had a really positive energy. He had a calming energy. And honestly, his mission, it just spoke to me. His mission is very simple. What he is dedicated to is helping others live happily. And his microphone is his weapon of choice. And so he is a songwriter. He is a performer. He's also a DJ and an entertainer, but he's also looking for spiritual warriors. Right now, he is coming through a second awakening and really starting to pull himself out of the matrix. And so what his mission is to help other people kind of remove that veil from their eyes to see the world as it really is and to see themselves as who they truly are, which is not what society tells you you are. So in this conversation with my guest, 3, the entertainer, we talk about his spiritual awakening, what activated his awakening, and why he's on a mission to create a connected tribe of spiritual warriors. And so again, if you are stuck in the matrix and scrambling to find a way out, I think this is the conversation for you. We also talk about sound healing and how music can impact not only your energy levels, but your emotionality. It influences your spirituality. And so we bring up, what we've probably all heard about, the Travis Scott concert, and even some responses that concert goers of Taylor Swift have been noticing is that energy has been really messing with people. And so then we get into discussing eroticism, connection to physicality, divinity, and reality. And 3 shares some intriguing ideas on how we can better sexually educate ourselves so that we aren't dependent on gratification and stimulation of sex, but that we can fold the layers of arousal into every dimension of life, which, if you've been listening to me, that's well within my philosophy. This was truly a phenomenally connecting and engaging conversation that I think you're going to love as much as I loved participating in it. We even get into this moment where we realize that sometimes conversations can be just as stimulating and gratifying as sex. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Before we get into the show, I just want to let you know you can find 3 the Entertainer on Spotify. You can also find him on TikTok and on Instagram and Facebook. But you're also going to find out who he is right now. Listeners, as always, please compassionately consider the perspective of my guest, 3, the Entertainer. Enjoy the episode.
Ready to get to all of it.
Good. Motivation is good. Yeah, I had seen
Absolutely.
that you did a video about that. You were talking about like you had experienced this significant challenge, but it kind of forced you to recognize the importance of the now. And that's what I do whenever I'm challenged or see obstacles in my path, is I kind of go back to that idea that at this very moment, this is all I have. And so I have to navigate just the now. So I really appreciate that's kind of one of your highlighted messages throughout your channel.
Yeah.
And so do you go by 3?
Yeah. Only when it's time to pay taxes.
Okay, cool. That's
the
fine.
government name. But yeah, I embody that symbol. So.
I love that. I was born on the 3rd, and 3's always been symbolically significant in my life. So I saw your name and I was like, listen. So
Perfect.
that was pretty cool. So
Awesome.
let's dig into this. Where do you reside from? Where are you at?
So I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, Atlanta. Okay, okay. And you are
Yeah.
also the entertainer portion. So you
hmm
perform, you sing, you write your own music?
Yeah. So I would say the majority of the way I make a living, right, is entertaining with other people's music, right? So as a DJ, MC, a lot of private events. The majority of my income comes from that, and then I have lots of music out that is streamed. I
Oh,
perform a lot of my music. I
I'm
actually
sorry. I didn't
slowed
know my
down.
video wasn't even on. Sorry
No,
about that. Oh my
you're
gosh.
fine. You're fine. You're fine. Yeah. So I took a pause, somewhat, especially with the awakening. I had a very intense spiritual awakening about, it's probably about 5, 6 months now.
Okay.
Um, so I kind of pushed my approach to music a little backwards, and wanted to get everything lined up with the spirituality. So I wanted my music now to kind of surround this new message. So I am working on an album. I got about 2 or 3 songs out. I got another one coming out in about a week or so. But I'm when I go back out to start performing my music, and of course, you make income from doing that. I want it to be lined up to, my current state of mind. I don't want any conflict. I don't want any contradictions. I want everything to be lined up. So,
I like that. So what activated the spiritual awakening for you?
uh, it's funny, because I've considered myself always grounded in spirituality, but there was always a fear of the masses or the public being aware of my spiritual place, right? Because live in a Bible Belt, grew up in a Baptist environment. My parents always taught me to think outside the box. However, we lived and consumed a lot of our spirituality in the church.
Mm,
And then a lot of people we were around were very, Christian oriented, and always felt like I had to pretend to be somebody else when I was
mm,
in a lot of these environments, right? So what ended up happening, um, is I was running one day, because I'm an avid runner, and I was behind on my schedule tremendously. And while I was running, something started, whether it was spirit or the universe, started telling me, well, why don't you just run like everything that you previously had on your schedule had already taken place? So, like, don't even worry about the fact that you didn't do such and such and such. Just enjoy this moment and run like all that's been done. And slowly but surely, it kind of shifted my perspective for the day. And I got really entangled into the now. And it just became something that was like infectious. Like, it just really permeated my day. My energy started shifting. And then my mindset just completely shifted within 24 hours. And I started having some very strong spiritual phenomenon. I'm talking about very deep awakening meditations. Um, my body had jolts that I was very fearful that I was about to have a seizure. Like, there was some physical changes that was happening, with this new realization. And my significant other didn't know what the hell was going on, but she embraced it. And I would say literally the shifting of my mindset, really embracing like being at the moment, drastically changed me physically and mentally. And that's what kind of sparked the awakening, because I started being very present, and I literally had no issues. Everything was beautiful for a good, I would say, 3 or 4 months straight, no issues, until I got very, very grounded back into the natural behaviors of a business owner. And, I've never really had a corporate job ever. So when you have to make quota every month, sometimes you go back to old techniques to do
mm-hmm,
that. And
mm-hmm.
that's kind of what's been going on with me building the tribe now, having a location, running the business. I find myself caught up in the past and the future. And that's where a lot of the conflict is happening again, because I know that is the problem. But sometimes in our 3D reality, we have to kind of jump in those
Yeah.
different realities. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I can relate to that so much, especially when I think I'm like going on this like forward trajectory and something will just pull you back and you don't
hmm
even realize that you fall into these old habitual
hmm
patterns.
hmm
And so what is something that you do when you notice that? Do you do meditations? Do you just like take a break and be like, I'm just cutting it all out? What is something that you do that typically helps you get back into the present?
Great question. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go in depth
Yeah,
on some
please
of these
do.
aspects. Yeah.
Please do.
So I can tell you two approaches that I have. One I consider to be healthy, one I consider to be unhealthy, right? Always have options.
Yep.
The way I used to do it before I embraced vulnerability and being open to others, um, I used to cut everything off. It was
Mm,
just kind of like, okay, this isn't working. I'm going to cut this person off. I'm going to cut this environment off. I'm just going to cut everything off and become a hermit. And I thought that was a healthy mentality for many, many, many years until it started creating a narcissistic, individualized human and totally different than who I am at my core, right? So that's how I used to deal with it. And it worked for a long time until I looked in the mirror and said, well, who is this guy? This guy is ruthless, right?
yeah.
Um, so now that I've experienced, spiritual awakening, I've done counseling too. I think counseling and getting counseling, not from only spiritual people, but whatever you can get, whether it's professionally or just having some people that you entrust. You want to have a mirror, somebody that can kind of reflect some of your behaviors, so you can kind of take a look at yourself from a different angle. So, because of all that, health wise, I do a lot of meditating, a lot. If I am not meditating or if I'm not being active chemically, um, I'll get stuck in that place. So like I've got to meditate, I've got to be active and get those chemicals flowing, and I've got to be vulnerable to the people that I consider to be in my tribe. I got to tell them what I'm feeling so they can give me their perspective and kind of give me some different angles. So just to kind of summarize, unhealthy, I cut everything off that was bothering me immediately. Didn't care about who it was or what it was. I cut it off. Health wise, now I meditate a lot. I'm very physically active to kind of get those chemicals flowing, and I'm very vulnerable with the people that I trust.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really, there's so many programs out there that tell people to just, if it's not working or if you're feeling a certain way or if it's challenging you, to just be done with it. And I see
Mm-hmm.
more and more people jumping on that bandwagon. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, what is this doing? Because I was the same way. I did that,
Mm-hmm.
right? I cut everybody out of my life. I can relate to the
Mm-hmm.
same thing, got very introverted and just kind of, and then I was feeling icky about that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
almost in a way you feel so disconnected, but you're not sure
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a while I was like, it's just nature. I just need sun. I just need to go out. And then that was doing it, but it was like, no, I think there's something to this. We're social creatures. We're supposed to commune with others. We have to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to adapt and collaborate with people, even if they push
Mm-hmm.
against us. And yeah, but the mentality right now, I think I feel so disheartened by it because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's just disconnecting and detaching from one another. And there's so much division. And what I appreciate about your channel, especially, is you recognize that we're all one. We're all
Mm-hmm.
energy and we're all connected. And when you try and tell some people that, they look at you like you're a little nutty. And they're
Right.
like, I'm not you. But the beauty, I think this is what love does for us, right? And this is what
Okay.
I've seen just in my own relationship with my husband is
Sure.
it's so transforming to the point where I look at my husband and I'm like, oh my God, you're me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of cool to come to
Yeah.
that realization, but you can't get there if you're cutting everything out of your life.
You are spitting so much truth, and for individuals like ourselves, we can talk about it from both sides. You got some people that are very empathetic, don't know how to let go, are vulnerable to other folks, and they feel that it's a weak component. And then you have people like ourselves who were very skilled and still are at cutting people off and just being very individualized. But one thing that you pointed out that is so true is deep down inside in your core, you feel sick, disconnected, or unhealthy, like something is off. And you're always, despite you might feel confident in what you're doing, you're very fearful of people's intentions and being around other folks. Like you don't ever feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't consider that to be a healthy place. And I I believe very strongly, um, like you said, that we are meant to be very social. We are creatures that want to be around each other. I mean, the COVID situation really warped our
Yes.
culture even more, right? Um, and when I went through counseling on top of the spiritual awakening, one of the things that she noticed that I just thought was very interesting, and she kept saying to me that she can tell that I have a big heart. I'm a very compassionate person, and I'm not allowing that vulnerable person to come out because of trauma, fear. I mean, all these different things. And I wouldn't embrace it. Like I'm like, yeah, maybe, so, but the more awakened I got and the more I got connected with tribes, like really in, I guess, embodying that concept that we're not meant to be by ourselves. There's a tribe, there's people out there just like you that's waiting to connect. The more I got connected to that, the better I felt. I'm like, man, life has so much meaning. I would rather go back to the ancient times when we all had tribes and we'd go and have an adventure and go meet other tribes and we'll share food and
Yes.
trade. Like it's adventurous. I think that is who we are at our core. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, out of curiosity,
sure.
what is your position on this digital connection that people are making with one another? Do you think that's fulfilling enough to meet that kind of like tribe mindset and that social communal? Or do you think that's something that we're using to fool ourselves to kind of keep the distance?
It's funny. Oh, great question, by
Thank
the way.
you.
Great questions. I enjoy very stimulating questions. I would say it's just a sign that we are truly in the matrix.
Mm,
I've really embraced that concept. Um, Things are so digitized. Our way of connecting, it's so just digitally embraced, right? So when you see the movie The Matrix, you have to understand that a lot of people make their first connections through the Matrix, and they have to have a connection and talk through things and be shown a certain amount of um, alternatives for them to be willing to take the correct pill. And once they take the correct pill, they're able to get to the reality of what life is really about, right?
yeah,
I feel like a lot of the digital connections we're making is just proving that we're in the matrix, and a lot of us are feeling and smelling and realizing there's another alternative that we're supposed to be experiencing. So it's just kind of like our gateway to finally getting to the true need, which is for us to actually connect in person. Um,
yes,
I don't think just to speak on this point because I'm currently working on trying to build a tribe physically, because there's a huge difference between being digital with the tribe and then physically being around folks and
yeah,
practicing together. There is a huge difference for sure, and I think there's going to have to be a balance of both. So no, I don't think you could just be fulfilled digitally. I'm finding a lot of us are doing it digitally,
mm-hmm,
but it's they're still missing something, and they admit it. They're like, I'm looking for my tribe. I'm looking for my tribe, but you have thousands and hundreds of people following you on this platform, that platform. These are technically your followers, your tribe, whatever, but you still feel unfulfilled. So no, you got to have both. Like you got to get
yeah.
both.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I kind of see that too. And it's such a struggle to try and like talk to people about that. And,
Okay.
because they really want to feel like what they're doing is super meaningful. And I don't want to discount that.
Mhm.
Like, right, like I've
Cool.
made friends, obviously. Like, hi, we're talking right now, but you're in Atlanta,
Sure.
I'm in Minnesota. This is possible. And you
Sure.
can have a connected conversation with somebody
Absolutely.
and you can create a meaningful bond. But I always feel like if we take out the touch reality of it all, there's so many layers that we miss, right? And when I think about
Indeed.
my philosophy is to try and keep my life erotic. And when I say
Okay.
erotic, I mean to incorporate all of the senses and the
Mm,
dimensions of life,
I
right?
like
Like,
that.
so all five senses, but also the social dimension, the physical, the spiritual, the mental, the
Hmm.
emotional.
Hmm.
And that is always absent within this digital
Hmm.
sphere, right? You can't
Hmm.
have the touch physicality, but also it's like there's almost this blockade between true authentic emotionality. Because I think
Sure.
emotion, especially when we healthfully express it, is something that touches us like with an energy. And I feel like we're just blocked by the screens
Mm-hmm.
and we can't
Hmm.
really receive that energy from one another. And
Hmm.
again, that leads to that emptiness and that searching for fulfilling that void that we're feeling when and I get it. We got comfortable, right? It's so easy to just be on the internet. I don't have to go to the bar, the
Right.
bowling alley, and meet people. And COVID scared everyone too. So like we
Sure.
were worried about getting sick and germs, but it's like, what did it do to us? And what is it still keeping us distant from? And it's that
Mhm.
that real physical spiritual energy that I feel like we're just totally missing out on.
I tell you one thing, because once again, you're very, very, very correct on that particular topic. I you know, I have to. I've got to be in an environment where I can hug you, I can feel your
Yeah.
energy, we can practice together. I mean, that is where the wholesomeness actually comes from. And there's ways around it. I think retreats, getting your tribe to kind of all unite once a year or twice a year. Um, and then there's but you're right. This is a physicality. The spiritual dimension has a physical component to it, and the internet is not going to be able to capture that. And I am finding that a lot of folks are lacking social intelligence, and they're also lacking um, the stressors that create spiritual growth. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is when you're in person, physically having conversations, you can't exit a, a dispute, or you can't exit a disagreement easily by just cutting the phone off or hanging up or just walking off the chat. Like, you have to physically find a way to rise above the moment. And I'm finding that a lot of people in the digital space are having a very difficult time with that. Like, if someone says something they don't like or disagree, um, their whole day is, excuse my language, screwed up. It's
Yeah.
ruined because they haven't had the amount of stressors that is required in person. So if someone says something to me in person I don't like, I'm gonna have to find a way to breathe, and I'm gonna have to find a way to cope and deal with it in that moment. Now, when you're on the internet, you can get off, leave, and feel justified in the process. So I
Yeah.
hope I make sense on that. I think there's growth that
Definitely.
happens in person. So
Yeah, no, totally appreciate that. I think that too, like, yeah, when I think, it started with Facebook for me. I'd started thinking, like, would you say that to me in person? Like, would you say that face to face to me? No. Why on earth would you say, I mean, like, what? And I would think this about people I've known 20, 30 years, right? Like, we
hmm
were in elementary school together. You're talking, would you have said this to my face? And we have removed that social intelligence, also along with emotional intelligence. So
mm
that's lacking. But I think unfortunately, I we got too dependent on assuming the school was going to teach us all of this, right?
ah ah
And so a lot of people don't want to do the work. They're like, I did 15
mm.
years of school. I went to college. I got my degree. I'm done. I don't ever have to learn. I learned, they taught me. And I think, well, they taught you the basic structures and components that they needed to put you into the system that would benefit
Mm.
them. And this doesn't benefit us, right? Like the way they teach us in school that benefits us if we're going to go join the military or going to go get a
Mhm.
job in the real world and in corporate America or in the government or something. But it doesn't teach us anything about like, mutual relation to one another.
Mm.
And we stopped doing the whole mutual recognition. Like we no longer see each other as human. We
Mm.
dehumanize, we demoralize, and we
Mm.
reduce people into boxes and categories. And
Mhm.
it's like we stop seeing the person and the divinity in front of us. And
Mm.
now it's just, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a Trump supporter,
Mhm.
you're a Biden. And
Mhm.
I think, is that all we are now? We're just minimizing the humanity and the divinity. And yep, I'm just this label. I just check this box and we can decide like either that's good enough for me or that's too much for me and move on.
Mm.
And we miss out on so many connections because of that. And we also miss out on developing our capacity to engage with people we disagree with. Like we do not know how to disagree
Mm.
anymore with one another.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Well said. I mean, I don't know. When you were speaking about it, I started thinking about my own experience as a parent, number one, and my own experience as a student. Um, and you're absolutely right when you speak about the way school teaches us. Like, I mean, there's only so much the government and certain private institutions can provide as far as an education. There's a lot of roles and responsibilities that your guardians, have, but it's so complex sometimes just living. Like, it's very, with the cost of living and the things associated with what you have to do, to keep the lights on, it takes away a lot of the time that you should be using on developing your offsprings, right? Me, with trying to continue progress as an artist, progress as a business owner, I barely have time to give to, my
Mm.
offsprings. And if I do give them time, I more so want to understand what they got going on and hear their mindset, right? And it takes away so much parenting that I think I could be doing or other folks could be doing. So it's complicated. It's so hard to live, I feel, in one of the most generous, I guess, countries in the world. Why does it feel so hard to survive around here?
Yes.
You
Yes,
know?
exactly. I agree with that. And it's also when you tell people that life is supposed to be hard, but not this hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think we all come into this. I think I thought it too, like graduating, like you have this expectation. I know it better be easy. And if it's not,
Mm-hmm.
I fear that too many people rely on scapegoating
Okay.
and, blaming institutions or systems or
Mm-hmm.
collectives or ideologies rather than just going, okay, this fucking sucks.
Thank
What
you for
can I
being
do?
honest.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what can I do to make it not suck without blaming an entire world that doesn't even know I exist? You know what I mean?
Mm,
And what would happen if we all felt empowered to just continue like absorbing as much knowledge as we could, right? Rather
mm-hmm.
than needing to be entertained all the time, right? Like
Right.
entertainment is good. I want to be entertained. I
Sure.
want pleasure, obviously, but
Sure.
this dependency we have on entertainment, engagement, give me
Mm-hmm.
attention. And we're not sitting in the present moment. Like I always think
Mm-hmm.
that too, that entertainment mixes and interrupts our ability to just be present and hear the birds sing and watch
Mm-hmm.
the bees buzz around, right? And to feel the
Mm-hmm.
grass on our feet. We want this constant entertainment, we want this constant attention, but we don't want to put in the work to upgrade our knowledge and our
Mm-hmm.
capacity to engage the life that we're in. We just
Mm-hmm.
want everything kind of just give it to me, make it pleasurable, make it entertaining, or else. And yeah.
It's so, and I can't just blame this generation. I mean, a lot of our generation is responsible for this as well. But one of the things that I want to harp on, which is what you've already touched on, is this need to be entertained. Um, I find it to be, I don't want to say a shame, but I know that, and you probably can relate. When I was in the moment of being like in the now and sustain that, right? I found that entertainment came naturally. Like nothing had to force itself upon. Like I
Mm,
was able to enjoy the birds, so I was able to enjoy a walk, um, literally just by giving it attention. Because if you think about it, when you're first starting something brand new, whether it's you're tasting a new food or you're just learning how to drive or you just start a new video game or a new sport, you're very much in the present,
hmm
and when you're in the presence, you give attention to everything and you have a very erotic experience, meaning all your senses are involved in that moment. Therefore, it's extremely entertaining because you're getting stimulated in so many different ways,
mm,
right? Um, so we now are relying on other things to do that for us. So we want the video to catch our attention immediately. So we want music to catch our attention and get straight to the point. We want food to be so sugary and full of, whatever it needs to be to make it taste good immediately. We don't want to put in any of the work. And it's concerning because what is that? There was a movie that Pixar and them did. It was a little robot guy.
Wally,
Wally, right?
that is my
Okay.
jam. My son
That is
only watched it 900 times in a year. So I know the whole, yes, but yes, exactly.
that's
Wally,
where we're headed. That's
it
where we
is.
are headed if we don't get it together. So I just wanted to harp on that. Yeah, I think we're giving people way too much power and too much of a need of others to entertain us when we literally could be getting entertained and stimulated every day if we just get in the moment. It's a choice. It sounds too good to be true, but it really is a choice.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe we're substituting with superficial entertainment rather than
Mm-hmm.
just embracing. Like, I always think like God gave us everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
everything is right here to stimulate. I think about that every time I see a sunset or a sunrise, right? Like this was for us. Like this is art. This is beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than seeing the true
Wow.
entertainment, the erotic entertainment that the erotic creator bestowed to us, we're
Mm-hmm.
substituting it with superficial, sugary entertainment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well
Mm.
said.
Yeah.
Well said.
And it's taken us in a downward spiral, especially in our American society. And So the remedy to that, I mean, I feel like is kind of what you're doing is you're seeking out spiritual warriors and you want to create this tribe. And did I see
Mm.
you're actually trying to create like you're trying to find a place where people can come and actually
I
meet
have it.
together? You do.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
so let's talk about that. What's that going to be like and what
Sure.
do you want it to do for your community?
Sure. So originally, because this is all kind of a recent phenomenon, right? I mean, it's probably been about a 4 or 5 month phase of getting this going, right? I initially started it in a kind of a classroom environment. One of the members asked me a question that really sparked my manifestation abilities, I guess. She had asked me, she was like, okay, are you choosing this space because this is where you feel we're going to start? Or are you choosing this place out of desperation? Like, are you choosing this because you're desperate to have a place to go and get this going? And as simple as that sounds, it really did something to my brain because I ended up realizing I did it out of desperation and it didn't have the right proper energy, right? So it was a challenge. So we said, okay, the hell with that. We're going to go find an environment that really embraces what we're trying to do. And lo and behold, it took a lot of energy, a lot of meditation, a lot of just belief. But a place called New Harlem Parlor, um, it's it's a castle, essentially. But
Oh,
I was able to
cool.
negotiate something with them, and I have a very large space to sorry, someone just texted me. I have a very large space to host a tribe. So what is happening there is there's going to be group meditations, almost like a monthly retreat where people will come. We will do sound healing. We're going to meditate and learn transcendental meditation. There will be massage therapy happening there. It's really a place for people to heal, and we will have discussions on spiritual topics. Of course, we will go live for the tribe members, and that's what I am envisioning for the tribe. Like when you all come together with us, it's a healing session that'll last 3 to 4 hours. We're just really cleansing our spirits and getting ourselves recalibrated to go and do life. Eventually, I would like for there to be weekly things taking place, and then I want to eventually have people coming from all over the country to come be a part of these retreats. But of course, I got to start one block at a time. So right now, I have a mansion to host these things, but I want to make sure the numbers make sense as well. Still it's a small tribe. There's about 60 of us initially, and I would say in Atlanta we're looking at about 10 or 15. So I gotta get those numbers up before we start going consistently on a weekly basis. So
And this castle is in Atlanta then?
yeah, so it's on the outskirts of Atlanta. So the location is in Gainesville.
Okay.
So it's about 30, 45 minutes from Atlanta, but the aesthetics alone and the way that we plan on approaching it, it's worth the drive. Just to say this, one of the things that I'm keeping in mind, because when you're growing anything, marketing is still a piece to it. It's nothing weird about marketing. It's just you got to know how to communicate the
Hmm.
intentions, right? That's how I see marketing. Um, so I know that if I kept it in the city, um, people aren't going to fully experience uh, the spiritual component of just getting away from the busy world,
I suppose because
right?
Atlanta's big and cluttered and full of people and noise and traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to give them
That.
an environment that feels like I'm not in it. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
get that. That makes
An
sense.
experience. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So the universe blessed us in a spot where you kind of definitely get taken away from that city lifestyle. You have to kind of travel to it. Um, and once again, my whole theme is giving people an experience. When they come to the temple, when they come to these retreats, they're going to have an experience from the drive there to when you come in, the music that we're playing, the way it's scented, the way it's coated with smells, the lighting, like everything is going to be an experience for everyone that's going to be worth it in the end. So,
Okay, so you said so sound healing. So this is a
mhm,
new understanding to me. Like I think in the last
mhm.
year or two, I started learning like, oh wow, that makes sense. Sound can heal. So can you speak a little bit about like what you learned about that and what your experience is with it and how it helps other people?
Yeah. So, certain frequencies um, are able to have some sort of a healing effect. They put you in a trance. I mean, of course, if you've ever done binaural beats, I don't know if you ever heard of binaural beats. Where you listen to certain frequencies
And do they
that
like
kind
ping
of,
and pop in different
yeah, just,
earphones? And yeah,
yeah,
okay.
it puts your brain waves in different, um, there's certain waves that take place when you're in a trance,
Hmm.
and binaural beats tries to put you in that frequency when you're meditating. So it has a healing component to it. Um, there's been a lot of, um, I guess, research that indicates that certain frequencies and certain sounds can cause you to kind of heal and be in a better place, right? So I am a type of person where I'm a perfectionist. So I like to stay in the areas that I am most experienced. So for the sound healing, I've brought in people that's going to take care of those particular areas. But from what I've experienced, because I've had some personal sessions, um, really, really, really enhanced my ability to go in a trance. It felt like getting a massage without actually physically being touched. The vibrations are so deep with some of the bowls that you could feel it resonating in your body, even clearing up blockage. I mean, it felt phenomenal. So, what I would say as far as sound healing is certain frequencies will definitely put you in a state where you can heal yourself, whether it's you doing it, right, or the actual frequency itself. It definitely inhibits that the position that you need to be in a better place. So
Awesome. Yeah, I've heard something
yeah.
similar. And then, in regard to principle of proportionality, where we have sounds that can heal you, there's also sounds out there and music that can put you in a negative state of energy too, right? And really
Yes.
drop your energy down and really
Oh, we've got to
drain
talk
you.
about
Let's do
this.
that. Let's do that. But I mean, really, because, I remember I've heard this about different concert spectacles, Travis Scott and Taylor Swift, where
Mm-hmm.
people go and they feel this negative
Mm-hmm.
shifting of darkness and rage and anger. And it, when I remember reading about that when it all came out, and started making me go, do I need to go look through my playlist?
Mm-hmm.
And is Beyonce okay? Yeah, I gotta pull Rihanna.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I have to do here? But I also did start like listening to like 444 hertz and
Sure. Okay.
listening to different sounds. And then
Okay.
I got myself a brass bowl to
Okay.
use. And so I
Sure.
really like to use that to kind of clear the energy, but I got my
Okay.
kids involved, right? So I have
Okay.
this whole yoga loft upstairs. And so we go
Okay.
up there and I do the bowl thing, and I ask them to just sit there and I say, tell me if you can feel anything while you're
Mm.
listening to this, right? And they all feel something. They feel like
Mm-hmm.
my I got goosebumps, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a vibration in my heart, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we definitely, I think I've always been drawn to music, right? I've always had to have music no matter what I'm doing. I'm not so much a performer or with
Sure.
instruments or
I
anything,
gotcha.
but strong appreciation for music. And I've myself even noticed, right? Like if I listen to her, she's my go-to when I'm in a funk, and I can
Okay.
listen to certain music and I'm like, I feel better. But then we also should, yeah, I think if you can speak on that too, just in any of your
Sure.
personal experience, to be mindful of avoiding that music that irritates us and really shifts our energy down into that low frequency.
Yeah, no, that is a wonderful, wonderful statement because I consider it my mission. It's actually what aids to my frustrations. Um, because I made a video not too long ago about, embracing my frustrations. I used to kind of belittle myself and get disappointed in myself because I'm like, oh, you're awakened now. You should be feeling this. A lot of different things that you do to yourself. So I've embraced it, and one of the things that it's something I'm just embracing is the majority of the frequencies from the music industry is definitely lower vibratory frequencies. Like it's designed to put you in a a lower state so you could be manipulated. Um, it's not necessarily intentional by the artist per se. I mean, I'm not in that position with
Yeah.
The Weeknd or Rihanna at the moment. My goal is to get there. But they're well educated on the power of music. But these 808s and certain tones that they use, they are designed to put you in a lower frequency, right? Which means you're able to be manipulated. It's kind of like being hypnotized,
Yeah.
right? If I can get you in a certain mindset, then I can get you to do certain things. So if you think about what's popular nowadays, because I have to play these things, and just a side note, I never listen to what's popular. Like I get agitated when I listen to it. Like if I hear the radio, I have to cut it off. Like I get agitated, or if my significant other is playing, what's popular. I have to get away from it because I could feel what it really is about naturally,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these songs, this music is designed to get you to party, get you to drink, get you to be sexual, get you to not care.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are escape routes, which they have their place. But remember, as human beings, we've got to learn to confront and deal with things intelligently. We've
Mm-hmm.
got to learn to not run from things. We got to be able to deal with it and learn how to overcome it. These um, popular things teach you to kind of escape from it, run from it, not give a fuck. I'm just gonna keep it real, right? Not give a fuck
Yeah.
about it, and go and just do you, right? And it sounds empowering, but I promise you, it's really putting you in a lower state. It's not making you progress and vibrate at a higher frequency to overcome a lot of those things. So I personally, as a DJ who is constantly playing this music every weekend, I cannot stomach this music throughout the week. I can't because the vibrations are so low. So, in order for us to make a change in this society, in this world, we've got to pay attention to everything, the music that we listen to, the films that we watch,
Yeah.
the foods that we're eating. All of these are vibrations, and a lot of these frequencies, we've got to be aware of how it's having an impact on our minds and on our bodies. If that at all makes sense, because I'm passionate about that subject.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'm on board. I think that too. It's what we put in our body and what we put around our body that can
Mm-hmm.
impact our energy. And if we're not mindful of that, it can really screw with us. So you talked about earlier, like drinking and being sexual.
Mm-hmm.
So do you not drink?
Great question. So for a long time period, I did not. But what I have done now is okay, kind of like the Buddha, right? The middle way. Um, there's a time and a place for it.
Yep.
So this is the way I now have intertwined my spirituality with what I have to do as a living. I think, and even Jesus is a prime example of this. I think when you celebrate certain
Mm,
accomplishments or certain moments or certain milestones, it's okay to sip some wine or just sip something and just, you know what I'm saying? You're not worried about anything on the outside. You're escaping from all of that and you're just now focused on what's
yep.
happening at this spot and what milestone you've achieved. And this is what people do at weddings. They do this at parties and so forth and so on. So I like to only entertain drinking if there's a moment that I'm celebrating or just, you know what I'm saying, trying to escape a lot of the things that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I don't do it often. It has to be a very strong reason on why I'm doing it, or my significant other can be like, "Hey, can you sip some wine with me today, or whatever?" Yeah, there's some moments, but it's not something I can constantly sustain.
Yeah.
I promise you, I'll start to get sick, or my body will get irritated or inflamed, and I have to make up for those mistakes. And what I mean by those mistakes, that means if I start to engage what people do normally as far as drinking, like some people have a drink every night, or some people have a drink every weekend. I can't do that. I'll start to get sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't want it to become too habitual and routine because it messes
Hmm.
with everything else that you're trying to keep in homeostasis. I'm on
Hmm.
board with that. I did that in my, I became a mom right away, like 18 and 21, I
Okay.
had kids, right? And so I didn't
Okay.
get to do the party scene. I was
Okay.
momming it up.
I can
But
relate.
I remember, I did go through a phase where like me and alcohol we were not doing it, right? Like it was
Okay.
like alcohol was screwing with me big time. And so I had to make a conscious choice because like my husband, very responsible, sometime drinker, right? Like I feel like a
Yeah.
beer. I worked outside all day kind of
Sure.
thing, right? And so what I came to discover is I didn't want to give it up all the way,
Of course.
though
Yeah.
I didn't want to have a dependency on it. But I
Hmm.
think you're right. We need to be mindful of like when we're using it. And so for me, I was like, what's my intention? Why am I drinking? And
Hmm.
what is going on in my environment? And so I think that like I agree with that. Like, especially when we think about like Jesus and the Bible, alcohol was used intentionally with
Hmm.
celebration. And I
Hmm.
think the gist of it was we're all trying to vibe on the same energy level of
Sure.
love and connection
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
celebration. But too many today do have this dependency on it, right? And I've bartended for over 20 years. So like I
Okay.
know what it
Sure.
can do to people. They have no intentionality behind it. It's not to celebrate, it's to forget, right? Most
Hmm.
people come into the bar, they drink to forget. They drink
Hmm.
to get over a bad day. They drink because they're in a bad
Hmm.
mood. And it's
Hmm.
that's that intention. You already have
Hmm.
that. And so whenever you're it's like you're drinking poison. because you're
Hmm.
just that intention is negative and it's low energy and it does drop you down. And yeah, I think, wow, every show I see, every music video that's trending in the mainstream, drink, 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 drink. And alcohol
Hmm.
is everywhere. And people do it and don't even think about it. Don't
Hmm.
think about intentionality. Don't think about being more sporadic about it. And then this becomes another dependency that I think really just perpetuates that divisive, disconnected mindset with people. Right. And then to the point about, sorry, I don't know if you want to speak on that, but I'm
No,
going
no,
to
no, you're
jump
fine.
into
No,
another
keep
topic
going,
real
keep
quick
going.
too. But then that to be over sexual, right? Like
Hmm.
what, and that alcohol has that impact on us. And so, do you see that too going on in society, that there is this perpetuation of promiscuity and lack of accountability? And, like you said earlier, you go do you and don't worry about everybody else. Do you think that's also contributing to this whole like matrix mindset and division is almost like we dropped the sacredness around sex?
Well, indeed, on that particular component, one of the things that I find interesting, because you make a very good point. Uh, what I am finding, because I'm kind of new to the spiritual community in a sense, right? I've been around a lot of people who have very strong spiritual beliefs, and I've had some strong debates. But to actually embrace the spiritual community, TikTok has allowed that to be an actual place where you can actually explore spirituality compared to any other platform. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
so strong on TikTok. What I have found is a lot of folks who are now spiritual have extremely high sex drives.
Hmm.
Um, and me being part of that, right? And them feeling guilty about it because they've come from a religious background, something very strict, and they want to be liberated, right?
Mm.
Um, and in a sense, I would say sometimes they're contradicting themselves about some of the spiritual principles versus how they live their lifestyle, right? So, what I mean by that is, I think having a high sex drive is a very positive thing. It's a creative energy that can be transmuted into some great areas, right? So, of course,
Mm-hmm.
when you're very empathetic, connected to the divine, connected to the universe, I will very much believe that it's that spiritual sexual energy that makes you so compassionate and want to connect to everything, right? But people are not fully educated on how they're supposed to transmute it. And they still have this mindset of wanting to be liberated from the matrix. So they don't really know how to line it up in a more constructive way because I have been finding that a lot of the women, because this is a female driven movement right now, and us men have got to start playing our role in this spiritual awakening. Because right now it's driven by women, and that's fine. Um, but what I'm finding is that a lot of women will really be flaunting their bodies. They'll be flaunting, freedom of being with men and women. Uh, to the people who are caught in the matrix on drugs, lost, not caring about life. Like they're druggies, right? They don't give a shit, right? A lot of the behaviors look similar to the women who are apparently awakened as well. So it's really concerning, and I think it has to do with still the music and the things that are consuming because a lot of the music that they might put in some of their messages is that music. It's the same. It's Travis Scott. It's this new hot, what I'm saying, song that might get some views because it's trending. It's like it's the same vibratory types of
Yeah.
music that they're listening to, and I think that's what's influencing them and making them still promiscuous and what I'm saying, having fun and doing the same things that people who aren't spiritually awakened are doing.
Yeah. No, I'm on board with that. I see that too. Um, yeah, I think I noticed as I became just more in tune with divinity and being more present and
Hmm.
trying to like keep my energy levels just like positive, it really does have this intoxicating sexualizing effect.
Okay.
And I think that's because, our bodies are temples, but they also are these pleasurable vehicles that we can use.
Hmm.
And I can see that. And I know this just coming out of that puritanical kind of evangelical mindset is
Yeah.
we have a tendency as humans to go really extreme, right? So we
Uh
come
huh.
from
Uh huh.
super prudish and
Hmm.
purity culture. And then it's like you're going over to porno polyamorous. Let's
Right.
get it on in the club with 50 people, whatever, put it
Sure.
all over. every
Sure.
single platform. Um, and hopefully it's just people are just trying to figure out like what they haven't experienced, and want to hope that a lot of those people just kind of stabilize and get back to, just pay attention to one relationship and work on that. um but there is such an agenda, I feel, to push people to reject monogamy and to reject
Hmm.
commitment and to just, yeah, sex, give it all out willy-nilly. And then, the consequence of that is there's no respect for sex and
Hmm.
there's no sacredness for sex. And then to the point that we also see that, especially within all over the world, sex trafficking and people wanting to include children and these
Hmm.
sexualized situations. And so, how do we, it's like, what do we need to do to shift that balance back in? And how do we empower people to like be confident and sexual and like have confidence in themselves, but to not push it so far to the extreme that you're like, I don't know, Michelle Foucault and freaking Alfred Kinsey kind of mindset. You know what I mean? Like, what is it? What is it that we need to do? What kind of messages do we need to be telling people to be like, it's cool to be sexual and feel empowered and
Right.
want to figure stuff
Right.
out and try new things, but are you still respecting that temple that is your body
Hmm.
and being mindful of like who you're letting into worship?
Yeah, no, it's such a powerful um topic because I think there is still a strong miseducation about the sexual urge and the sexual drive. Once again, like there's a stigma to it. Like you're in the Bible Belt, there's a huge restriction on sex until you're married, or you know, or even if you're not religious, it's still like, oh, she's a hoe or he's a pimp or whatever the case is when
Yeah.
they have so much sexual involvement, right? So, I think there's still a strong stigma of being very sexually promiscuous, and then there's also a strong miseducation on what to do with the drive that you naturally have. So you feel guilty. It's like a person who's addicted, like they're in a cycle, right? That they make the mistake of using the substance to cope, right? And then once it wears off, they feel bad that they use the substance to cope. So then they take the substance again, so they don't have to feel bad for using the
Mhm.
substance, right? So it's like a continuous cycle. So that's how I feel about the topic of sex is that a lot of us have strong sex drives. We feel guilty for being that way. We're tired of feeling guilty, so we engage in it because we want to be liberated, right? So we do it, right? And then we might feel bad about it or we don't want to be judged. So it's like, hey, you know what I'm saying? I'm just going to do me or whatever the case is. And they never learn how to transmute it in a constructive way. There are consequences for being that sexually promiscuous. I know personally.
Mhm.
You get drained. You don't respect your body as much. You don't consider it a temple, and you create these patterns, and it's hard to break out of it. But I think people need to stop being stigmatized for having a strong sex drive, and they need
Mhm.
to be educated on how they can use that energy. And until we get to that point, I think we're going to be stuck in this particular place right now where people are just having sex, not caring. You know what I'm saying, and kind of contradicting themselves because they say they're spiritually awakened or this or that, but they look no different than the girl that just came out of the club lost in
Mhm.
life. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, totally. So, just out of curiosity, what do you think like a proper, healthy, like sexual education would look like? Like just off the top of your head, what would you want? What if you could teach something? What would you want to tell people?
um, I want people to actually verbalize, like counseling, like verbalize. What do you feel when you're turned on? Like, I want people to be very aware, and if they can go into that mindset of what does it feel like to be turned on, they can be very connected to their urges, right? Because it's kind of like, once again, I'm relating it to an addiction because one of my long-term significant others was addicted. And it was one of the toughest things I've ever had to deal with, right? And what I learned about addictions is until you embrace that you're addicted or until you embrace what state you're in, you're not going to do anything about it. Whether that's anything, a narcissist or whatever, until you recognize that you got a problem, you're not going to do anything, right? So first thing is being in touch with your sexuality. Like what turns you on? What does it feel like? Which parts of your body get stimulated? Um, and first, once you get educated about what it is that stimulates you, then I want to have a discussion about Okay, well, do you feel that way when you know, walk, in the park, or do you feel that way when you listen to certain music? Like, what other things can put you in a state similar to that, right? Give them some alternatives. Um, and the more we have these conversations about how you're stimulated, right? What you end up realizing is, once again, there's options, there's other coping mechanisms besides getting in the physical act. Um, One of the things, just to be transparent, when I was extremely sexual promiscuous, and this was for years. This was after my first divorce. I lost value of women. I looked at them as objects, and I know personally. And I had a very high body count. And one of the things that I thought was going to happen is that I was going to feel good and fulfilled and feel like I conquered things, right? But what it ended up turning to be is like a person who's really hungry and they consume a lot of junk food. And you get an extremely high experience at the moment. But after a while, you feel nutritious, you feel drained, you feel disgusting because it didn't have any real nutrients, right?
Mm,
Um, that is what I find to be the case for majority, if not all, of people that I know that are promiscuous, where you're actually looking for it to be stimulated. You think you're going to find in sex, but honestly, you might need that in traveling, or certain conversations might stimulate you more, or maybe
yeah.
massages or healing. There's other ways to get stimulated. And it's all coming from the same place, that sexual drive. So I hope I'm making sense. So, one, get in touch, have conversation about what stimulates you. And then two, talk about other things that might stimulate you. And eventually you'll realize you have other options besides engaging in sex. And I think those are the two strong places to kind of start as far as a conversation on the topic. I don't want to go too deep
No,
off
I
in the
think
end
that's
because of,
awesome. I
yeah,
think that's great advice actually, because I see that, verbalizing what you're feeling kind of falls in line with what a lot of people struggle with is even like owning their want and saying what their want, but then
okay,
taking it to that other layer of verbalizing what you feel. But I really appreciate that. I never even thought about it like that before, is to think about how this feels and to see if you can't fold that into other layers of dimensions of life and also have that same pleasurable, stimulating experience and kind of go, oh, it's not just sex that I'm looking for. It's just a connection to this sensation and a connection to this. And I really appreciate that. I never would have even thought about it that way.
can
Just
I
kind
can
of
I share
fold it
this
in.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'll let you carry on. One of the things that's been crazy for me, and I'm talking personally, is that because I have an extremely high sex drive, right? I find that having conversations with the opposite sex or even other men, that is extremely stimulating. Like, you have some questions that gets asked that makes you like have to think out of this atmosphere, right? Or you
Mhm.
feel a connection, or the conversation is so welcoming and so warm. It is satisfying, similar to making love, right? Um, I would have never found that to be a way of transmuting that high sex drive, right? Until I started asking myself these questions, like, well, what does it feel to be, turned on? And so I went down that process. Okay, well, are there other things? Well, I don't know, music when I'm on stage, like, certain poetry, certain, and then now I found out, hey, it's having conversations is so, you know, it relieves so much sexual tension
Yeah.
that's built up. Whether I'm attracted to the other person or not, it doesn't matter. It's just that experience stimulates you in a way that's very constructive compared to actually engaging in sex. So I was just sharing that. Like, sometimes conversations like this does it. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know, right?
So
I know. I know. Why do you think I do the podcast?
yeah,
That's how I get off. No.
you get, yeah. I mean, real
I
talk,
do though.
right?
It does.
So
It gets you high. And you're widening your view and your perspective by like hearing someone else's that you're like, oh shit, there's another layer of life
right.
that I never even would have considered. And now it's folded into like my archive. And so I think with that, what I really appreciate about conversation is it creates connection, but it widens our perspective and it helps us, I think, empathize and be willing to understand other people more, right? Because we have all these experiences with different people. And it's kind of like that transformative quicksilver of Eros, and to a degree with that fiery passion. And it can help you, I think, just be more accepting of differences and different people in diversity. And then you realize like how delicious diversity is and how much you
Mm-hmm.
need disagreement and a little bit of pushback and a little bit of,
Mm-hmm.
well, someone else lived this experience and this happened. And you're like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yes.
So we're wrapping up here. I want to be mindful of
Sure.
your time. But
Sure. Sure. Sure.
before we head out, if you could just tell the listeners like the best way to connect with you to know what you're doing, your music,
Sure.
and to find out more about this tribe that you're building and how they can connect
Sure.
with you physically in Atlanta. If you wouldn't mind just throwing
Absolutely.
out all your contacts that you want.
Sure. So I'm on every social media platform. The two strongest right now is TikTok for the spirituality. Of course, I have a large following on Instagram, but I would say the best way to find me is definitely going to be TikTok at three, and that's THREE, the Entertainer. That is my handle. You can find me on all the platforms. So definitely find me, send me a message. I love to connect. Of course, you can also email me at 3theentertainer@gmail.com. I have a website, 3theentertainer.com. So whatever platform you can find me on, send me a message, definitely connect. Um, I would say, with everything that's happening right now, there's so many different directions that people are contacting me. So me and my small little team are being aware of all the DMs and
But it
all the
might
different
take a
ways you can
couple of
contact
weeks
with
to
me.
get
So
back from you. I know from
it might,
experience. So I'm
from
sitting here like patiently, like I want this guy on my podcast, but nope. So,
it
and
might,
then I'll
it
make
might.
sure for everyone who's going to look at the show notes, I'll put all the links so people can reach out and
Perfect.
connect with you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for sharing space and taking time to do this
absolutely.
recording with me. I wish you all the success on the tribe that
Thank
you're
you.
building and your mission. And I hope that you can find more spiritual warriors to help awaken people to break out of the matrix.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. This was very fruitful, and I learned something new by trying to live an erotic life. Like, I really love that term.
Thank you.
And I think this conversation was very stimulating. So greatly appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. We have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.